So I will call the October 21st meeting of the Jericho Planning Commission to order. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Planning Commission members, for being here. Sorry. Tonight. So the agenda tonight, we'll have some time for public comment. We will approve our minutes from October 7th. Chris Dean, our town planner, is going to talk to us about an application for a municipal planning grant, which he will explain to us is a complement to the ongoing work that the town is doing to investigate wastewater for Riverside. But this relates to some things that we've talked about here in terms of infill and is there room and where's the room and what would it look like and how did the new zoning regulations look on the ground if they were to be built. So he'll talk to us a little bit about that and ask us to endorse the application. Then we will spend time continuing our project, which we call Enable Housing. And tonight the topic is talk about conservation-based site design, which is a concept that the state of Vermont and many other states are advocating for. Then we'll hear some reports of other business and wrap up the plan for November 3rd. Does anybody need to make any changes to the agenda? Okay. So we do have some people in the room, one person in the room, a couple of people online. You are invited to make a brief public comment, 3 minutes or less. And does anybody wish to make a comment? Okay. So moving on, then I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of October 2nd. All right, thank you. And a second? Second. Wendy, thank you. So the minutes are on the table. Does anybody have any edits, corrections, or clarifications to the minutes? Good as written. Thank you, Nancy, for your minutes as always and for being here tonight. All those in favor of approving the minutes of October 7th as submitted, please say yes. 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 Any abstentions? Any objections? Okay. Then I will pass it over to Chris to talk to us about the new municipal planning grant.
Great, thank you. At recent meetings, I've shared that I'm preparing an MPG grant that'll look at development scenarios and fiscal analysis to supplement what Jericho is going to get out of the preliminary engineering report. And Susan already did such a great job introducing it in her introductions. I don't feel like I have to say too much, but the application requires the Planning Commission recommend funding the grant, which is why I put it on the agenda for tonight. So I'll just say a little bit more about it. So the study will build on the PER, which will estimate capital operating costs and recommend an annual user fee. That's what's in the PER. That is not what the grant is for. The PER will only look at building the system, how much it will cost to operate and maintain the system, and then user fees based on that. This additional analysis will evaluate it'll tie the PER to land use. So it'll evaluate development scenarios within the proposed service area. It'll compare how many housing units could be built under different levels of investment for the wastewater system and estimate potential user fees and tax revenues for each scenario. So we'll just have more information to evaluate it other than just how much it would cost to build and maintain. These are questions that have come up at both task force meetings. It's come up in these meetings at the Planning Commission, and it's been raised by public comments at the Select Board. So this is information that we want, and we just currently don't have anything in place to get that. And we haven't identified any funding source that would support this kind of analysis. So that's what we're going to be. That's what my proposal for the MPG grant is. I've been coordinating with CCRPC, with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. They've reviewed and provided some feedback on the application as well. So I don't know if you have any questions about the application.
So is this to put out a call for a consulting team to do this? Like this is the funds for that. So this isn't applying for a program or service that already exists that does this. We would have to then go out and find the people to do.
Correct.
Is that right?
It is to get the money, and there's a cap. Well, anyway, I don't go, but it's to get up to $30,000 to fund this analysis, and then we would have to procure services.
Got it.
And then this is the task force that you're obviously doing the application. The task force that's in charge of, should we get the money, kind of the next steps and seeing it through, or is that a?
I think the task force would be the body that would get updates on it and get feedback on the analysis. They'd be the ones most related to what the reports, the analysis is going to be doing. I would be managing the consultants.
Your manager.
Okay, cool. What's the timing? So when would we hear if we're approved, and then when do we get the money, and when would the project be happening?
That's a good question. So, and actually I gave a wrong answer at the select board meeting. So at the select board, well, I won't say what I said at the select board meeting. The decision on who would get the funding would happen at the end of December, and the money would be available January 1.
Oh, so we don't have to wait a whole fiscal year.
We don't have to wait a whole
Okay.
fiscal year, which is important because we want this analysis to be being done while the PER is being done, so it can inform the PER, not when the PER is finished. So as soon as we get the money in place, we want to get a consultant on board to begin as soon as possible.
Do we have a selection pool of those consultants yet?
Working on it, I would say yes. We have some options for how to do procurement that might be quicker than others, so we're looking at that.
And so what you need from us is,
A motion to, the application requires a recommendation from the planning commission to submit the application.
I would like to recommend that we submit that application.
Thank you, Heidi. And a second?
Second that.
Eric, second. Any other discussion on the application?
Do we need to worry about the wording of our?
I don't think so.
No.
I think it was clear enough. All those in favor of support for the application, please say yes.
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 Great.
Hey, everybody unanimous.
You. Kathleen.
Hi. Then we will move on to the next topic, number 6, enabling housing and conservation design.
Great. So this is continuing our work on enable housing. Look at encouraging cluster development in areas outside our village centers and balancing that growth with protecting natural resources.
Nice pictures. They show a very nice variety of architecture.
We'll get a preview of all slides when I go back here. Great.
Yeah.
All right. So this is just every time, just sort of a recap of what the charges from the select board. We are methodically moving through these things. Tonight, our discussion is focused on considering additional natural resource protection in areas we are looking at to make it easier to build more housing. I also want to recap from the discussion at our last meeting on dimensional reforms. A couple of us met outside of this and report back on that a little bit. Specifically, want to follow up on how Heinsberg has separated density from lot size, and how if Jericho wants to do this, it could address some of the guidance from the select board related to lot size and frontage requirements. So at the last meeting, we compared Jericho's zoning requirements to other comparable zoning districts in nearby towns. After that meeting, a working group, that was myself, SJ and Eric, got together to discuss dimensions in greater detail. At that meeting, I went over what I had learned after talking to Heinsberg, which had stood out because several of their zones maintained the density of some of our rural zones, like one housing unit per 10 acres, but allowed significantly smaller lots in those districts. It was only like 0.5 acres, and Westford had a similar setup. They were able to do this because they decoupled density from lot size. The development in Heinsberg district was able to maintain the underlying density, but it gave property owners flexibility in how they subdivided their land. So instead of regulating density by tying it to minimum lot size, their development review board assigns densities to lots as part of their subdivision process. So I'll just walk through a couple examples here to illustrate this principle. Now I know in this example, I'm putting 1 unit per lot. I know that our zoning regulations allow 1 unit or duplexes. Just for simplicity, I'm just saying 1 unit just to understand the concept. So the first plan on the left shows what I'll say is a 40-acre lot. The whole square is 40 acres. And it contains 4 lots that are 10 acres each. So that's 4 lots, 10 acres, 40 acres. This is what Jericho's zoning allows now in both the rural ag and the forestry districts. The middle plan shows the same 40-acre lots subdivided into 4 lots, but with 3 1-acre lots and 1 37-acre lot. So this maintains the same density, but allows greater flexibility in how that density is allocated on 40 acres. And the third plan on the right shows how a property owner could decide to create a single 1-acre lot with 1 unit designated to that lot, and then 3 units designating to the remaining 39 acres that could be subdivided at a later time. So all subdivisions in Heinsberg, like Jericho, require DRB review, and the DRB assigns that density to each lot during the subdivision process. So is there any questions about how that would work?
Yeah, so. Maybe it's the next slide, and I did prepare, but now I've forgotten. Does the DRB, what kind of guidance or criteria does the DRB use in Heinsberg
Or
for determining each, because it sounds like they weigh in on every single decision, and each time there's a decision, they have the opportunity to assign density. Do they have a rubric or criteria or something that guides those decisions?
they have a minimum lot size of 0.5 acres.
But they don't have
And they
how
have,
many lots can be,
Well, the density is, sorry, this is important. There is a separate table that has density. So for example, in their comparable district, their density is 0.1 units per acre. So you would need 10 acres to have 1 unit. But if you have 40 acres, that would be 4 units
and you can put them anywhere you want, but
on lots of any size.
but the table at the very beginning assigns the density, not the DRB.
that's why I'm
Ambivalent.
confused, because it,
So the table says on 40 acres, you get 4. But then it's other than 0.5 is the minimum, then it's up to the landowner to decide how to distribute those 4 and how to subdivide the land.
and so the DRB is only going back to the original table and not saying, well, you're coming in, for example, with the middle picture, but we'd prefer that you have the right-hand picture because of X, Y, and Z.
So
Do you see why I'm?
Yeah,
confused?
potentially, like, it depends, like, are there natural resources on the site?
I
Are there
see.
steep slopes on the site? So yeah, there may be other things that they look at that would influence how they.
Where the lots are located.
Yeah.
Well, influence the DRB's decision-making process. I think that's part, because one of the things that we have been striving for, I think, is to make it as transparent as possible, how the DRB is being guided to answer things. And as easy as possible also for a developer or a homeowner to sort of know, like, once I get to the DRB phase, like, I know exactly what to expect. Because that will facilitate the ease of increasing housing. Like, that's one of the principles we've been working with. And so I'm just having a little bit of a hard time putting my head around this way of decision making and knowing if this means that Heinsberg is not as transparent, or if it's giving more powers or less powers to the DRB for decision making because they are making the decision each time at the DRB review about the lot size. It's because I just don't understand it.
So I think you are getting to the next slide,
Okay,
but I want to,
zoom out, zoom in.
well, I want to go back to just the basic concept of
Please.
understanding how, like, the base density for each of these four scenarios is staying the same.
Right,
But there's flexibility in lot size that allows someone to just create a smaller lot. But the base density doesn't change. I talked about that a little bit at the last time, like saying like our base density is in line with other places, so it doesn't seem like that is something that I think we need to look at, but the specific recommendations that came from the Affordable Housing Committee, the select board, was to look at reducing minimum lot sizes in all other
Yeah.
places. And this is a way to do that.
How do they deal with minimum road frontage requirements?
They are less. I mean, they're not as big as what you would have for a 10-acre lot. It's like, I'd have to look again. They do have minimum lot widths requirements. And they do have minimum frontage requirements, but instead of being like 400 or 500 feet, they're like 100 feet. They're more like what you would have for a smaller lot.
Yeah, okay, because like some of those scenarios don't have any road frontage as well, no, right?
Correct. So you're asking a lot of really good questions that are kind of getting to my
Okay.
next slide, which, so first is you understand conceptually how the smaller lot size and the baseline density.
Can we go back? Because I don't.
Okay,
yeah,
So I have two questions. The first is, and I'm sorry to do it to you, but walk me through again how this is different than a PUD. And my second question is, what? So this is only available to people who are subdividing. And so at initially, that 40 acres was owned by one person. And now it's owned by two different people. But the way that you were able to get that is because it was originally one larger parcel that then got subdivided.
correct.
So yeah, so can you disentangle the PUD? What does this get us that a PUD doesn't?
Well, we would need to look at that because the benefit of going through a PUD right now is you can do a smaller lot. You can also ask for a density bonus. And then there are a number of other things that you can do to build the density bonus. If we went a route like this, we would be taking away the smaller lot size as an incentive to do a PUD, and it would really make the incentive for doing a PUD the density bonus.
And this doesn't require. It kind of does through density, but it doesn't require the set aside land.
Correct.
Because this is just a subdivision, so now. Original dude still has 39 acres. That they can only put one unit on, but. Okay,
But maybe that owner maybe the owner is in the state's working lands program. Or maybe they want to farm it, or maybe it's forestry land that maybe it's working lands. And it allows them to maintain their working lands but still subdivide their land in a way that lets them maintain their property intact.
So what we heard, and I think this was in the zoning for better neighborhoods guide, is that the PUD is perceived often as a hurdle. people think it's more complicated or they think it's, it has special requirements. So this gives you that small lot flexibility benefit of the PUD without requiring a PUD.
Am I mistaken on this, but don't PUDs require an HOA?
Require what?
An HOA.
Not required.
A PUD might have elements that would require an HOA, so they're not required to have this, like a PUD might have a shared septic system or something like that, that you would need an HOA to manage, but a PUD is required to have a shared septic system.
So they would not have shared roads, shared other features that an HOA would normally manage.
Depends on how it's laid out.
Okay.
We were getting into some really good questions like, how do we deal with frontage width and how, and I don't want to cut that off, but I wanted to make sure everyone understood conceptually how this works. Yes,
Well, you had two questions.
Yeah.
Did you get both of them answered?
I sure did.
Okay.
okay. What impacts should be considered if Jericho were to do this? What if we were to go this route? What are some of the things that we would need to think through? And Wendy mentioned lot frontage requirements would be something we could look at, and that's one of the things on the list from the select board that could be addressed if we went this route. More easily addressed if we went this route.
Can you say a little bit more? Why would that be easier?
Because if you're allowing for smaller lots, it'd be easier to say, oh, you only need to have 100-foot lot frontage, as opposed to saying, well, if you have a 10-acre minimum, we want to make sure that you've got a larger street with narrow dimensional requirements like that. Maybe more of a
Right,
justification.
you'd scale them, you'd do the ratio, would get smaller.
Do you remember when we went and looked at density, we talked about having it be some fraction or number of units per acre. And we decided that wasn't the way to go. Do you remember why? You do, of course you do.
Because it was a very big change, or it could be perceived as a big change, just methodology wise. And we, at the time, thought like if we needed to think through all these other issues that we're gonna talk about right now. And that it seemed like it would be a big change for Chris Flynn. It wasn't, and they were hurrying us to do like quick fix. And that was why.
Okay.
But yes, that big
So it's
spreadsheet
just
that we
needed
built out,
more-
yes,
It
was.
needed more thought. than
It's
we
because
had
we were
before.
looking at just trying to make it easier to do the types of units that are allowed in each
Yeah.
zone, so we narrowed.
Okay,
that
that's good. I
focus.
couldn't remember if there was,
Yeah.
if there was a big like red flag that we were like, oh no, this is a bad idea. Let's not pursue that. But if it
No.
was just we need more time to think this through,
Yeah,
the
it
implications.
was,
That makes sense.
yeah. I would think one of the impacts would be what SJ asked about, which is open space. So in a lot of our neighborhoods have their dedicated open space, which they like, and it provides green space sort of distributed around. On the other hand, like Eric's talked about it, like, well, if you just have this like fallow field and it's not really doing anything, and then you have HOAs that don't allow public access to that open space, or you don't have open space adjacent to other open space, which like magnifies its benefit. So there's like a trade-off and a balance there. I think like to totally give up that leverage would be something that we'd want to think through, because in some cases it's really beneficial to the landscape and to the people and to the future intact. You gave us an article about intact land, so that would be a consideration, I think.
And does Heinsberg have this in all their districts?
No, just their,
Just one?
because,
Or they're
I
just
think,
a growth area?
yeah, just their larger lot areas.
The rural.
Oh, the
The
rural
rural,
area.
just the rural
Oh,
areas,
okay.
yeah. I mean, what you were saying, Susan, made me, because I was also thinking, is there a cap? Like, if you have 130, if you have 130 acres and you go through this over a course of 10 years, you create, I don't know, 6 lots or 4 lots. Well, maybe is that a cap? And when you go to a 5th lot, you have to go to a PUD? Like, I don't know if there's a trigger that you can do this so many times before you have to go through a PUD to. I don't know, I don't know how that would play out. I have to think through that, but.
Yeah.
Because that assumes that you're creating lots of small lots, but you could subdivide it in, well, actually. There's something preventing someone from going through a subdivision now and just creating 2 20-acre lots. Or 4 10-acre lots.
Something else that comes to my mind on this though is, there's nothing that I've seen that indicates you have to have your 4, in your example, your 4 1-acre lots contiguous with each other or on any part. So what would it be possible to include in there something that says, or require that those 4, or any subdivision that's done through this method, that the lots are not near any sensitive activities, and yet that also don't have, and this is coming from our trip to Montpelier last week, something where you've got a 200, 300, 400, 500-foot driveway to get to the furthest houses, and we're disrupting a relatively open field. We're still allowing the person to do what they want to do, but if you daisy chain the houses along, I'm defeating part of that purpose. So would that be something that can be added into this? Does Heinsberg consider that at all?
Right, like how do you encourage or require that it really be clustered?
Yeah.
Which is one of the themes that we talked about a lot.
Amesbury's has a minimum or a maximum driveway length. For that.
Well, we heard on Friday was that state of Vermont now says I think it's driveways over 800 feet require Act 250. So that's gonna put a bit of a stop on some of that, I would think.
Can you go back a slide? I'm sorry, the visual is really helpful.
And you asked about protecting natural resources.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what our natural resource overlay should be doing, but we would need to look at that and make sure that that's. Do some test case scenarios and see if that's really working.
Well, even within a non-sensitive natural resource area, if you have a contiguous forest block and you have 100 acres, you've got 10 acre zoning, so you can put 10 units in there, and you decide to spread them out all over the place, your contiguous block gets destroyed. Or not destroyed, but it gets hindered, cut up.
Fragmented,
All of the
that's the
above.
word they like, yeah, yes.
Yeah, so that would be, again, yes to the idea. I love the idea of doing this because it's going to allow us to get people who would not otherwise be able to subdivide their land to do it in a way that's reasonable. But some of the protections would have to be there that says you can't daisy chain 800 feet or do 2 of them each going 800 feet, things like that.
Can I pause for a sec? I know you want to ask something. Could be, my brain is not keeping up with this conversation in that I fundamentally don't understand why this would incentivize more housing.
Makes
But
it easier.
Because it's the,
Why?
the illustration on the left requires each lot to be 10 acres. And so in Jericho, your entry point for 10 acres is 300 grand. Each of those 4 slices on the left would be expensive, big lots. All the way to, the one in the middle, those 3 much smaller lots that I can't read how much, what's like 1 acre each.
Yeah.
1 acre each is a lot gonna be a lot less expensive.
To build something.
Just as, you know, theoretically, from an
Okay.
economic point of view, because it's much less land.
Plus it also
It's a much smaller lot, and all there, you have more chance to share a road or to share other infrastructure. The house is more likely to be smaller because the lot has been purchased for a lower price.
Right, I can see that in the middle one, just not on the right one. But I heard Chris, and sort of it enables people to keep much more open land and still have something developed.
Or the one on the right maybe has, you know, one kid's married and so they get the lot, and the other one, you know, loser kid is not, you know, not ready or is, you know, is young for what, not that marriage, that was really bad. I don't mean to say that marriage is the only lifestyle. I was just trying to lighten the conversation. I apologize. But forgive it. You have the landowner on the right is preserving option to subdivide again in the future. But that's what Chris was saying, like, you gotta be careful about like future, like how do you have that multiplier effect?
That was my question. So I actually don't wanna.
So the original, what he's saying is Heinsberg, the original parcel is assigned.
So that is
Four
assigned
units.
different, so in the far right now, the 39-acre lot has a different density than the surrounding areas. That's just tied to that 39-acre lot, because if they wanted to, subdivide another 1 acre, and put another unit on, then they'd still have 30 acres for 1 unit per. And then if they did it another time, and so then eventually you'd get a lot that has a much more dense. Unless you change the density allowable for that one parcel, even if it continues to be subdivided or whatever.
I know you actually possibly on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So if you've got your 39 acres and you subdivide again, and you've got another 1 acre lot, now you're down to 38 acres. That means I can do up to 3 units still. I
Yeah.
subdivide again to
No.
37. I
You
know
don't
that's,
Right,
but
so you
that's
don't
my point.
recalculate.
so you have to, so that one parcel then,
The 40 acres.
the 39 acres.
Oh,
Has a different density than the rest of the parcels around it, because like it only has the potential for 3 more.
I see what
You
you're
know what I'm saying?
Definitely,
Because
yeah.
otherwise you could end up with, phased subdivisions that you end up with much more density than.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes,
so that needs to be like tracked.
yes. And the way they do it in Heinsberg is there's a file for well, and it's how PUDs are done here too. It's how subdivisions
We've
are done
seen how
here.
successful that is.
That's a different issue.
It's an issue.
Yes,
Okay,
an issue, but it's a different one. Yeah.
okay.
I had a point, but it was just reinforcing something you made and I can't remember what it was, so.
Okay, so you're still asking us to think of other considerations, so I think to record this specifically is like the kind of the downstream effect of sequential subdivision on the map, basically.
Yeah, but yes. Yes,
But if you're saying that it's the original assignment and that's what stands and that's what runs with the land, then that's
Yeah,
sort of
so
the
even
answer
if
to the
it,
question.
even if it changes owners or it gets subdivided again like that.
Mhm.
and there could be ways of getting at some of the issues that are being raised here, like maybe the original parcel has to be maintained 50% of that size or 6. I don't know. There might be a way to put requirements in that prevent a type of development pattern that we don't want to see. There might be ways to put requirements in that cluster where smaller lots are located.
I have
And
a
if that was
question.
ever rezoned from 10 acres to 5 acres, that original person who now has 37 would be able to put in another 6 units. If it was rezoned at some point in the future.
That's a question I don't know how to answer that. I mean, we need to know, there are a lot of what ifs in that.
I have a question that may be more related to our conversation about preserving habitat blocks, but I'll just put it out here and then we can take it. But it's related to Eric's question or comment about driveway length and setbacks from the road. Conceptually, is it any different to limit driveway length in these areas that we want to have protection of natural resource areas? Is it any different than our zoning regs that we did in village centers for maximum setbacks from the road?
Say that again.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, we have maximum setbacks, right, in the village centers,
Yes.
right? So could we consider that for
Should
these?
we
areas?
also maybe have maximum setbacks in these areas so that we make sure that the development happens closer to the road?
That's correct.
Because closer to the road minimizes the encroachment
Yes,
into the rural field or the forest. That's what you're asking.
that is what I'm asking. And it would be a more equitable regulation if we're requiring maximum setbacks in one area, then perhaps we should consider that in others.
I think we could, but I would want to know what is the goal? So the goal for having maximum setbacks in the village is because we want buildings fronting the streets and there's a relationship and right. So what is the goal that you would want to achieve?
Habitat protection, avoiding fragmentation. So maybe it's not appropriate in all areas, but maybe it's appropriate using our NRO overlays in the primary or secondary or whatever criteria we think about.
The conservation people talk about penetration.
Mhm.
They don't like it.
But I mean, the answer is, let's define what the goal is and
Yeah.
figure out what the right tool is. And
Yep.
a maximum setback might be the right tool, a maximum driveway width might be the right tool, and the state has an 800-foot limit for maximum before Act 250 is triggered. That doesn't mean that we can't set a narrower, a smaller driveway width or goals that we want to set for ourselves.
But it could also
Length,
be
not width.
that the only developable properties are more than that away from the road. And so we'd be depriving houses. We said, sorry, this is 1,000 feet away from the road. Yes, it's a beautiful spot. It's got great septic. There's nothing fantastic there, but you need a longer road. I think we want to encourage that in some cases, not all. So saying you can't do it might prevent us from developing and growing in places where it's suitable.
Can I play devil's advocate for a minute here? Is our goal enabling more housing of all types, or is our goal enabling clustered housing and promoting clustered housing in rural areas? And so I just going back to like, what's our goal? I think our goal is enabling more housing and more diverse options for housing. Does that by default mean in these rural areas that we have some value that should be clustered? Right, I think we haven't said that out loud and why that is. It's a presumption that we have, but I think we need to say it's a goal because of, and I think Linda, you got close to it, it's a goal, maybe it's a goal because we have an assumption that it's going to preserve natural resources or something. I just feel like we're equating the two without being explicit about why. And we're making an assumption that I want to make sure that we can stand behind. Because, yeah, I think it's about enabling more housing, more types of housing?
So I think there are different ways of getting at both of those things. So the different types of housing is part of the discussion of what are the types of uses we want in the different districts, whether it's single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex. That is, or multi-unit. That is getting at the diversity of housing issue. The getting more housing, I mean, we are still bound by the purposes of our zoning districts. This would be a way to make it easier to build more housing by letting property owners subdivide and create smaller lots, and they'd be less expensive. So I think it would be achieving both of those. That's not getting at your clustered development point, which I think it's good to get that specifically down. It's in the recommendations from the Affordable Housing Committee to the Select Board to us. It's throughout the town plan. But I jumped ahead to look at that guidance document we've been pulling together, and it, like, clustered isn't on there.
Right, it's in this particular zone, and so that's meaning that the 10-acre or 10 rural.
Well, I feel like a couple of meetings ago,
Just want to make sure.
talked about why clustered is.
Hmm.
I can't remember what the kind of planning was.
We talked about
planning,
conservation.
Conservation planning
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
and that I think was why we've been focused on clustered, because in these conservation and rural areas, because it is a way of achieving housing while still honoring the focus of that district.
Right, so I just want to be explicit about that we're carrying that forward
Yeah.
now, because it's about, this is where we're grounding it from the conceptual into potentially some recommendation for this particular piece, and that it does connect to, in my mind, this density question, or whatever, maybe wrongly, but in my mind, it's connected. And just hearing.
Well, it is
conversation.
connected because if you enable smaller
Mhm.
lots, then you're more likely to have site design and layout where the housing or the development, any kind of development, is closer together, which generally, yes, is a good thing.
You're making it possible, but you're not necessarily incentivizing it.
Right, but I think maybe that's a good point. That's
Right.
like what you're saying is a consideration,
Yeah.
is like clustering. You know, maybe that's one of the differentiators between this kind of high level subdivision design versus a PUD. Maybe, I don't know, but my answer, as you were asking your
Yeah.
question, I was like, it's totally clustered, it's totally. I think it's interesting that you went back to look at that document, because to me, that's like, oh, that's a miss. We definitely should be explicitly calling out, like, how do we encourage it? When do we require it, if at all? And reminding ourselves why it's a good thing, which is what we learned about when we talked about conservation design.
But it does kind of bring me back to a little bit about what you said about when do we want to trigger a PUD? Is there a number at which point we do want to trigger a PUD? Because the PUD does work to protect all of these natural resources, open spaces, whatever. It's designed to do that, which is why it is and it is more burdensome and it is more prescribed.
So the current regulations require a PUD if it's 5 lots or more.
Right, okay.
That seems like maybe a reasonable thing to.
Oh, that
Keep.
that cap is already in there. That
Yeah.
is already in there.
Yeah. So what other impact? That would there be, so sort of to Wendy's point about, should there be a maximum lot size? For a residential use? We talked about that a long time ago, like,
Well, using the example we had of 40 acres being available for 10 acre units, split up into that. The max size that you're talking, you say, okay, you can split it up, but no lot can be larger than 20 acres. Which means the remaining lot would not be that 47 acres or whatever it was at the end of it.
yeah, although I was thinking totally differently, I was like, should any house lot be, greater than like 2 acres? So that you would preserve more of the land instead of chopping it up into house sites.
I think we'd rather
I
have,
think it's probably, it's too micromanaging, I like it.
wouldn't we prefer they have smaller lot sizes to
Yes.
preserve the larger piece?
Yes, that, right,
Yeah.
so I think,
Allowing smaller sizes would probably do that more effectively, because it's a lot less expensive to develop a 4 quarter-acre lots than it is to do 4 1-acre lots. You've got less road, less infrastructure to put in.
So. Is there a general interest in continuing to look at this? Moving toward separating density from lot size? Okay,
Because the pros are flexibility to the owner. Smaller lots might increase the, might incentivize more development because it would be less costly. Both to develop as well as to go through the process of having to go through a PUD. So those are the 3 reasons why it's a good.
It also has the possibility of not needing to be in an upper income bracket to live in a rural.
yeah,
Because it's a smaller lot size.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
now there actually is an acre lot that you could purchase out in that district.
and I think it
Or
has a
smaller.
higher likelihood of producing clustered development is another pro. Say,
It's gonna make it easier for owners of large lots to pass part of it on to their family without losing the entire thing.
or generate income so they can continue to maintain their properties, yeah. So, oh, that's true,
No, go ahead.
okay,
When we write this up, can you write up or I know that our wonderful note taker is going to
yeah,
do
it'll be
this,
in the
but
mid.
I think it's really helpful to name explicitly, so we have it documented as a group. Like, what are the benefits of it, not just the implications that we seem to get really worried. They were worried things as opposed to positive things, so thank you for being explicit about it.
Being able to,
Right.
if you've got the tiny, if you can do the tiny lot, and you could do three small lots as far away from each other as possible, and now there's gotta be a road and there's gotta be a whatever.
but if you, oh, I see what you're saying.
Land, but
I see what you're saying, so. That way, to prevent something like that. You would need, instead of having like a spaghetti lot that has a driveway that's.
Yeah.
You'd need to, some of the things that were raised, like maximum driveway widths, maybe they need to be contiguous with the
I
lots.
personally don't like any of that, but I do like that, okay, we've got the 4, we've got a trigger PUD. But I do think it's worth more discussion and thought, yes,
Right, so this is a good list,
sorry.
and we do have a working group, which is SJ, Eric, and you just couldn't make the first meeting, so. The working group will continue working on this and come back to the commission with. Some other ideas and maybe some. A little more concrete.
A little trip to Heinsberg, yeah.
Is there any opportunity for public input?
How are we doing on time?
We're over, we're like 20 minutes over.
Like behind time?
Yes, well, like past where we're supposed to.
Is it burning or something? Because we're gonna work on this for a while. So
Well,
we can
I
follow
would
up
I would just suggest that
quick.
people realize when we talk about this stuff, that the majority of the state of Vermont was denuded, and what are regarded as natural resource areas may not in fact be the best opportunity. And with global warming, the ferocity of storms, that we should be looking at how to mitigate the adverse effect of climate change and look at zoning from what can we do as we develop land to improve how it mitigates the adverse effect of nature, and to look at what the resources are. Sitting here with pieces of paper and playing Monopoly in lot size. Land is land. What can the land support should be the first question. And then with our changing lifestyles, people are now living and working in their homes. And so being in a high density area may in fact be adverse to the necessity. And if you think of Walden's Pond, that I have more animals in my yard than I have in my forest, and I'm immediately next door to the 13,000 acre entity. I think there's a premise here that zoning, as it's laid out in Jericho, has any really good logic to it going back 75 to 100 years. I think you can take a whole different look at, say, how can we achieve the goals of the community, and looking at the natural resources and how to do it. And the presumption that human intervention is in fact bad. We've done better jobs on land we've developed than what the glacier and the farming did. You know, like everybody loves stone walls, but those are actually potential channels that creates flooding, massive erosion, and creates harm. So if we look at the land instead of the way I see it being approached, I think you're going to end up with a much better result. And the life quality, things have changed markedly. And artificial intelligence is moving us a lot farther. So I encourage a different way of looking at this.
Thank you.
All right. I'm just gonna flash through these. So there's been no change to the goals, although we should probably add a goal here, specifically the cluster development, to make sure that that's captured.
Okay, last bullet.
Oh, yeah, site plans with cluster development should be,
But it doesn't really call it out as like a goal. does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's a
needs to
priority.
be a little
Yeah.
bit more explicit, yeah.
Yeah.
for the guidance. The only thing I've added here was looking at the purpose of the commercial district and the forest districts. Was looking at the commercial district. So before we had the forest district, and then I added the commercial district to make sure that that was captured. I think this is something else that we could have a working group look at for the wording of those two things, and then bring them back to the full commission. Lindy, you seem really interested in this. Do you want to? Sure. Okay. Anyone else? Great.
I just give you kudos, Chris, for this process. I read the sort of this tracking that you have done for us and setting us up in this manner has been so useful.
Oh, good.
So thank you.
Thanks.
I think it has been a fantastic process.
Great, thank you. I wish I had a better grasp on time management. That is I struggle with outside of these meetings as well. Because I think I'm trying to pack too much in these, we just have a lot to cover in a short amount of time.
We'll get you a 5-minute hourglass then.
That would be great. So I don't know if we can make our 10-minute takeaways 5-minute takeaways or it's shorter. Yes,
I have
yes.
no takeaways other than I got annoyed with it because it was international and most of our forests have already been denuded. So we're not starting from fresh. So I got frustrated and just stopped reading.
All right.
Into a 1-minute.
That was my takeaway.
It prompted me to look at resources, Sabina, that you shared out about local forest protection and the habitat blocks, and I listened to better zoning to prevent forest management fragmentation webinar from Vermont Fish and Wildlife, in which our NRO was called out. I thought it was a really helpful webinar because it got down into zoning recommendations. So
Can you say it again, Wendy?
the better zoning to prevent forest fragmentation webinar. And I'm sure Sabina can circulate the URL. Or we can.
Yeah, I can send out the list again.
But it made me think about, so I started with global, but then I'm like, I need something more local.
So thank you, Heidi. Thank you for complimenting me on my process and then.
I wasn't kind, sorry.
I'll just say I was trying to find something that wasn't too long and technical.
I'm sorry.
No. It is perfectly a valid takeaway. So.
I thought it was good because it sort of had universal truths.
True.
Like, even though we're not talking about the rainforest in the Amazon, the function and the importance and the integrity and like thinking about things as a unit, it was helpful. And what I thought was really eye-opening was that the degradation of the site might be, you might lose 10% of the site deforested, the rainforest or whatever, but you would lose 30% of its climate mitigation.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating. Like, first of all, that they say that out is cool, but that made me think that it's really important making decisions.
Thank you, Susan.
Chris's ego is just really good tonight.
No, we're all doing good. We're all doing well. Okay. I'm gonna move on because we've got, because I think we've got some report out to the end we want to have some time for too, so I want to keep moving on this. Okay. So on to really our second big point of discussion tonight is the natural resource overlay. So this is sort of like our new point of discussion for how new information on forest blocks can be incorporated. And what I'm hoping to get tonight is an agreement on a process for going forward with this, and then forming a working group to come back and go into this in a little more greater detail. So first, a recap on information on forest blocks. So the Conservation Commission verified Jericho's forest blocks already identified by the state through a project funded by the Select Board and as part of the work done by the town plan. This map shows Jericho's forest blocks that are critical to maintaining connected habitat and where they connect to other towns. The numbers on here identify forest blocks that are referenced in the report, so you don't need to know about all that right now. And so these are the green areas here. Much of that are the areas that we are looking at for adding to the natural resources overlay. Some of them are already protected in the high elevation forest layer that's on in the NRO, but some of this is also new. So this is the current overlay, which includes primary and secondary conservation areas. The difference between primary and secondary is, from what I can tell, is to advise the DRB on which resources warrant greater protection as part of their review. There are two resources that are listed under primary and secondary conservation areas. And then there's guidance for protecting them that is the same. So each of the resources, well, I'll get to that in a minute. The map and the description of these areas are shown here. Shown here are from zoning. So last time I looked at it, they were from the town plan. This is from zoning. The blue areas on this map, they're a little hard to make out, but you can kind of see where they are. Those are the high elevation forests, and they're one of 9 mapped natural resources that are shown on the map. Those 9 natural resources are divided between the primary and secondary resources, and 2 of them overlap on both. That makes sense?
Sorry, so the forest block is not
It's not on this picture.
represented here.
Right,
And it's not represented in our regs or in our overlay district.
not yet.
Not yet.
That's,
Okay,
that's tonight's discussion.
got it.
Or like the direction of the discussion.
Sorry, I'm catching up. Okay, I'm
Right.
involved now. So sorry.
Yeah, what is shown on here, those light blue areas are our high elevation forests, which are mapped and are on the NRO.
But our other forest blocks are not.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the reason I'm drawing the distinction between the primary and the secondary conservation area. So primary conservation areas identify the rare resources that are the highest priority to protect, and the secondary resources are valuable resources, but they're not necessarily rare. So there's a differentiation between the two. Each of the 9 resources that we have fall into one of those 2 categories. There are 2 that overlap on both.
But I think the reason they overlap is because there are subsets, right? So,
Correct.
right, so it's like these 3 types of natural
So
communities
there are
are
upland,
one,
yeah,
and the remaining ones are other natural communities that are in the other. So it's not duplicative. They're just they just subdivide themselves within, deeper in the definitions.
right. So the upland natural communities are showing up on both the lists, both the primary and secondary lists. There are S1, 2, and 3 upland communities, and S4 and 5 upland communities. The S1, 2, and 3 are identified as primary ecological, and the S4 and 5 are secondary ecological.
Okay, so what about, can I ask in particular, because I had somebody knocking at my door talking to me about wildlife crossings and corridors. And so I see that wildlife road crossings, does that mean like a physical road as opposed to, okay. And so wildlife migration patterns. Do you understand what I'm saying? Where does that
It's
fit?
more like what we would be calling out connectivity.
Connect, okay.
So that's, if you go back to the map with all the blocks on it.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. So connectivity is what takes an animal from Richmond at the bottom through Jericho
Yeah,
and up to the northern Green Mountains and beyond in Maine, let's just say. That's connectivity. And that's what we're trying to establish, the block. And then what we call the stepping stones, right?
Mhm.
So big blocks and then little chunks between them that connect them.
right.
And that's the
Okay.
wildlife.
Okay,
And then on the NRO overlay, those large pink
Big
blobby things,
Bismarck are.
those are our mapped
Let's see.
wildlife crossings.
but there's crossings of roads and not connectivity. That's what I was just making sure that I
The
understood.
distinction between wildlife crossings and connectivity, yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Right. So there's a general understanding between the difference between primary and secondary, and, okay, great. So all the permitted uses that fall within a natural resource identified in the overlay are reviewed as a conditional use wherever they are, as long as that use is permitted. The only exception of that is wildlife crossings. You can have a permitted use in a wildlife crossing and you can go to the ZA for review. It doesn't trigger you to go as a conditional use review to the DRB.
Okay. All right.
Vernal pools have the most restrictions, with no uses permitted in those areas, and wildlife crossings are the least restrictive and only require a ZA review. All uses in high elevation forest blocks, which are currently the only mapped forest block resource, require a conditional use review.
Can you explain the difference in the vernal pools plus 100-foot buffer versus vernal pools between 100 and 600 feet buffer?
If you go to the pink, I don't know if it's gonna show up on our map, on our thing. But basically, the 100-foot buffer around the vernal pool is like where the primary region where the amphibians are spending their time, right?
Okay, so.
And then
it's
out to
in-
600 feet, they will go
Got it.
into that distance, but
Yep.
like real home turf. So on our map, like the dark blue dots, the purple, what looks like dark purple
Yep,
is the 100.
got it.
And then the purple around the blue is the 600.
Got it.
So basically, within that zone is where the amphibian is most likely to spend its life. So,
Yeah.
you know, like from laying the eggs in the pool to hanging out for the rest of the year.
Okay, thank you.
So zoning also includes guidance for either the ZA or the DRB to use when they're reviewing for each of the resources. So there are both general standards that apply to all resources, like development should be located in a way that minimizes impact on resources is like a general standard. And then there are guidelines that are specific to each resource, or I should say to some of the resources, because some of the resources don't have specific guidelines. They only use the general guidelines. So forest blocks, high elevation forest blocks is a resource that does have specific guidelines. And they call out factors like retaining forest cover and vegetation so it functions as a natural habitat, siting development to minimize impacts of siting and clearing, mitigating impacts within contiguous forest blocks, and taking advantage of topography. So those are examples of some specific guidelines tailored to that resource. The guidance is specific on what to protect, but it's general enough that it allows the DRB flexibility when it's doing their review. So it's not prescriptive, it's guidance. I think that's one of the things that makes our regulation such a model is that it gives guidance, but lets the DRB make decisions using that guidance. But one of the things that we wanted to do when we started all of this was sort of assess how our natural resources overlay has been working, and Sabina did an awesome job going through and looking at examples of cases that have gone through. She looked at 10. They are either approved or in the process of being reviewed, so they're not all like completed. It was interesting in mapping them out. They're just dispersed throughout Jericho, but they are sort of like centrally located. So north and south, they're all north and south, but they're in that middle area, which actually lines up with like our low density residential zone, which is where most of these cases have been. Total, it's over 600 acres that have been looked at just for the NRO alone, and based on what Sabina pulled together, there's over 220 acres that have been set aside as open space. More of half of these reviews are in the LDR. Not all the resources were impacted in these reviews, so not all of those 9 resources were included in the NROs that were conducted. They're assessed. The most common resource was the forested riparian habitats. There were 3 in the high elevation forests. I would say, I think Sabina agrees that overall, the overall assessment is that the regulations are effective at keeping development away from the natural resources. So I think we would conclude that it is working. It's not that there aren't any issues, but I don't think those issues are related to the regulations. I think they're related to permitting and people not following what was approved as part of their review process, but not the regulations themselves and how they're being interpreted and enforced through the review process. Sabina, is there anything else you would want to add to that?
No, that covers it.
I have a question. So when we are saying to sound clear, the NRO has not impacted housing, meaning housing is still developing.
So of these cases that
Yeah.
came, so the way it works is if Chris Flynn gets an application and there are resources identified on that parcel that show up on the map, that triggers, a note to go to the chair of the Conservation Commission, blah, blah, blah. So the point is, even with that extra scrutiny, the permits are still being issued and it's not impeding the ultimate result. It's just maybe doing what it's intended to do, which is to say, build here, not here.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but I just wanted to make sure that I understood that. And so we're not hearing pushback or concern either from developers or looking at like if this is in contrast to our goal of increasing housing. Again, what we're looking for right now.
We haven't heard that, and actually, when Chris did his survey of the
No.
developers, one of them commented that it was actually helpful because it benefited the project because it did make them kind of rethink and do a better job. So,
Well, the other thing that this makes me think of too, in terms of the enabling housing conversation, is that we have a robust enough system and regulations in place that I don't know how much concern there, like, that we will be able to touch these things and protect these resources, because what we've got seems to be working.
Which then begs the question of if a change is needed.
No, I think it makes me more comfortable about entertaining these questions about enabling more housing in more of Jericho. Because I'm more confident or am confident that we have a system in place that is working to protect the natural resources that can stand up to people permitting to build. Or applying to.
Any other questions on kind of where we are? Before I get into what the recommended approach is to go to the next step here. Okay. So the recommendation is to take this information, the new forest block information, and incorporate it into the structure of the existing natural resource overlay regulations. It's working, so how can we integrate it within that structure? Working with the Conservation Commission to designate forest blocks as primary and secondary resources. So consulting with their consultant to see if there's a hierarchy here, whether they should all be secondary, whether they should, I don't know. Consulting with CCRPC, they've got experts in this area too, and seeing how they recommend designating this new resource on the natural resource map. And then the third would be looking at the review requirements, starting with what we have for high elevation forest blocks, because we already have guidance for forest blocks. Seeing if they apply to forest blocks in general, I think they might. Determine if the permitted and conditional uses are still right for what we're looking at now. And if the development standards that we have for forest blocks can be applied just to all forest blocks. Maybe they need to be strengthened, maybe they're fine. Maybe what we have applies to primary and we have another one for secondary. These are the types of things we need to look through. But we need more guidance from the Conservation Commission and experts before we can kind of figure that out. And we've got a tentative plan in place to start to do that. Any questions on the recommended approach? Okay. So the questions are, and this is great because I think we are back on track on time. So what should be considered when figuring out how to incorporate information in the forest blocks in the zoning? Like are there big ideas or things that we need to keep in mind when we're doing this? And then are there concerns about incorporating forest blocks into natural resources overlay that we need to take into consideration?
Can I just step back? So this is a separate parallel project that's like happening in parallel with the other stuff that we're doing. And so I assume the conservation, is there a subgroup? Or a subcommittee from the planning commission that's working on this? In parallel?
Well,
What happened?
so I would say yes. So I didn't mention this. I had a pre-meeting to go through this with Sabina and Tom Barabao. Susan she couldn't make the meeting. So I think our working group on this is Tom, Sabina, Susan, and myself.
Cool.
So we have a combined working group with Sabina being the liaison between both.
I guess the only question I might have, not knowing anything about this, is that those forest blocks really kind of cover everything. And so,
Like most of town.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're noticing that.
Yeah, it's not a secret, so
No, I mean, so that's where the rubber hits the road. We have to
Yeah.
figure out how to best, like what Chris, is that on your thing? Like how to figure out what's primary, what's secondary, and do we need to really change the language to account for the fact that it's more common, spread out more. So yes, we have those same questions and that's gonna be our task, is to kind of sift through that all and make it make sense and stay within, our existing boundaries.
Yeah. And I remember when talking about this with you, like part of this project or review or whatever, like there's a ranking system, right?
That's
that
all those little
actually, like,
Well, no, actually, those don't confuse me.
Sorry. I forgot that I just said.
The numbers that you see are just the labels that were assigned. There are each number on there was given a rank by a very meticulous process that the consultant did.
Yeah.
With a bunch of different attributes. So yeah, and so we're thinking about how best to divide up the 35 blocks.
Yeah.
And is one of the things we want to ask the consultant is like, is there a natural break, or was it a little more random? And so we have a question.
Sure.
But yeah, we're thinking about all those things.
Is one of the considerations for primary is looking at the relationship to some of these larger blocks into the whole state corridor and system?
I think that's a logical, possibility.
Yeah.
If we're gonna assign something to be, in the primary category, which is more unique, more special, then maybe that would be the guiding information to take us to that conclusion.
Yeah.
What would
And
this,
then-
sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. My other question was, is there any relationship to the conversation that we're having now and Act 59? that 30 by 30 and 50 by 50 Land Conservation Act, is this? And I don't, it's not clear to me. What does Jericho have any responsibility to meet that, or is that more at a regional planning commission? Responsibility, or is that a state of Vermont saying, these are the areas that we want to, this is the 30% of the state that we think is important to conserve?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have an answer for you this minute, but I think it would be great for us to sort of at least think about what Jericho's role in that larger vision could be. So,
So I have two questions. The first one is a repeat from the last time I saw this. Is where's number 22?
I know they're all there because
21.
I know,
23, it's
you know what it
24.
is? I think it's like
You can see that.
right here.
Hmm.
I think somewhere in here, you see how
Must
there's
be
an
between.
extra line there? I think
Okay.
it's there. Anyway, I went through them one by one.
And there is a 22.
Correlated each number with its ranking, so I know they're all there. So I cross-checked them, but yeah, it's a little wonky on them.
Okay. Next question, really more important one is how many of these blocks are roadless and without any houses on them? How many of them are not de novo because we've already had it over,
Well,
as
I mean,
just heard earlier, this was all down to fields 70 years ago.
you can see it if you go to our current town plan.
We don't have houses on our current town plan. We have lots.
No, but, well, I hear what you're saying. I think if we can get this, so I'm showing Eric map 9 from our current town plan. Which is the tiered conservation priorities map. That's existing, it has our existing information in there. But it also includes the forest blocks.
But people are living in those forest blocks, even as we talk today.
Yes.
So
But what I'm trying to tell you is that once we get that layer added to our map viewer, then you would be able to see where the houses are in relation to that. So maybe we can ask CCRCP to add this layer that's from this map in our map viewer. So
If
that
it's on that map, I'm assuming they probably already have it in there, it's just not turned on. But we can follow up with that.
yes,
Yeah.
make it happen, and then your information will be there.
since I don't want us to go down the road of saying, hey, this is a place that we have now deemed as a valuable and valuable piece of natural resources. And, oh, sorry, they're a landowner, but you're SOL, you can't do anything further with this. If there's somebody who's already there who's doing it for, using it for whatever purposes they may be using it for. Yeah, that would be
Just
a
remember
no
the-
compensation.
The premise of the natural resources overlay is peaceful coexistence. The premise of the natural resources overlay is not no development in a resource. The only resource that has that is the vernal pool plus 100-foot buffer. Everything else says you can build, just build in the small envelope. You can build, just don't fragment. You can build just XYZ, and that's what Chris is saying. We need to consider, because the forest block has a larger coverage area, it's not necessarily all high elevation to already has development on it. That's a good consideration. But just know that it's not no, your SOL. It's not your SOL. It's like you can, and here's how you can do it in a way that produces a better design that has peaceful. Yes, it might be a constraint. It's not, it depends on how it gets written. But I just want to make sure it's peace. That was the whole purpose, was coexistence.
And just for those who are listening to this SOL stands for so out of luck.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, good.
This is all good.
We like your approach.
Great. So this seems to be go forth, prosper, convene, come back. Got it. Okay. Great. Thank you. We're ahead of time
Way.
by 5.
Okay. That's not much, but yeah, good.
Yeah.
Take it when you got it.
Okay. Any public comment?
One of the things that I'd like
Name.
people, my name is Jim Carroll, and I live on Boulder Hill Road. One of the things that we're encountering in our forests are that what we would say are bad species. And for example, very tall pasture pines that are 130 feet tall, and they look like cactuses, as well as beech trees, which grow up, say, 50 or 60 feet, and then they die, but they're prolific. So instead of having a good, healthy, diverse forest with good trees, that we oftentimes end up with areas where they're prone for tipping over, and that trying to incorporate into your forestry management good water absorption as we have more droughts. And the lake is possibly worse than it's been in 80 years. So that we are encountering conditions where it would be nice if the zoning recognized the need to manage the forests. And particularly if you look at a lot of the HOA lands, they're developing with really bad stuff that then spreads to our forests that we're trying to manage. And like, let's just say that our project over on Morgan Road, the apple orchards, the number of deer that show up over there with those ancient trees that haven't been cared for in 75 years is amazing. And that if we encourage as part of the development, plant this, encourage that, so that it's land management, not in my backyard and you have to do it this way. Because if we don't do something, like I've got a pond on my property, but it was built. And now that's the fire protection for the village and the fire protection for my property. And then I have wells all over the land that feed to a spring house. And what's amazing is that springs have kept going, even though everything else is drying up. So it would be nice to have, we're going to encourage proper land management to come in with a plan. And I sort of need to say something in favor of density for Mr. Lacy, who's not here today. That the way we measure, and right now we're all pulling our hair out. What's a lot? Well, I have to put a footprint lot underneath my duplex unit in order to be able to get it through the FHA. And so if I put 6 lots and then I want to do 6 more, I've now triggered Act 250 because I wanted to create a 24 by 32 foot footprint lot. So the definitions and the clarity, it's mind-boggling. And my least expensive lawyer, who's pulling hairs on this stuff, is $315 an hour, and his consulting partner is $495 an hour. So if we don't define units and lots, because I don't think a footprint financing lot is a lot.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Online?
Have any more
We had
public?
Michael Oman was there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to move on, Chris?
Yeah. 3 quick updates, and some of these I think I've given before. Tomorrow, VLCT has a HOMAC Planning and Zoning Forum. I'm on a panel with Chip Sawyer from
St. Albans.
St. Albans. I'll be showcasing our BMG work, so thank you all for that. I'm gonna be telling everyone how awesome you guys are and awesome our select board are and getting that,
His humble beginnings here.
Chip Sawyer,
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with him.
oh,
Is
really?
he from Jericho?
You might want to ask if he ever worked in Jericho.
I'll ask him.
I think he did a gazillion years ago.
Who's that name?
Chips.
Chip Sawyer.
Cam and Finley presented to the Leahy Institute's wastewater working group, the bigger project that we were on. They also did a great job. And I know I've mentioned this before, but Leahy Institute is working on getting greater visibility for that study, so we'll be doing that press release and how to package all that. And then I think at the last meeting, I let you know that we were not picked by DHCD for a Homes for All pilot project, which was too bad, but like within days of that, I was connected with a professor at UVM who has a class that's looking for a project this semester. So I'm going to be working with them on, and SJ is going to be helping out on this too. Having them better understand what the housing issues are in Jericho. They're going to write a report on that and then put together a program for us to do our own Homes for All initiative next summer. So maybe they'll have a program for that, and we may even get an intern out of it to help implement that for next summer. So
Which professor?
Megan Cope.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Have hit her.
Yeah,
But she's also on the Williston Planning Commission.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's great.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that, and really excited about working with the affordable housing.
He made lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great commission.
I don't want to fall Jeff Doobie yet at the HCD and. Well, no.
Ha, But are you planning to have this project produce topologies in that same way? Or
I
will
was-
the deliverable be different?
I was thinking that they would use the same typologies that the Home for All program has,
I see.
but have a program that's tailored to doing community outreach here, education.
I got it. Okay, that's great, yeah.
Yeah, but that'll be what's coming out of there. That's what's in my head.
Mhm.
It'll be coming, we'll see what the students come up with, and SJ will be helping.
That's in the
Figure that
spring
out.
semester or it's happening right now?
It's happening now,
Okay,
but it would be for implementation next summer.
right. But
Yeah.
it's this fall semester.
They're doing it this fall semester, but it'd be for summer 26.
Are they gonna do any kind of presentation to us, or is that beyond the scope of their work?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it's always good. I think it's good for them to do that, so I can talk to Megan about it.
I have a tangential question. But just because last time we talked, I think we had shared that we recognize that there's some opportunity for us to ensure that folks are aware of the changes that we've already made and how it impacts decision-making and sort of just, it's not the reporting itself. Is that something that fits in any of these or ways in which we might help spur the spreading of the, like, did you know? Here's the change. It's now easier, like all the things that we were trying to accomplish. Is that your job? Is that our job? Who's doing that? Who's doing that, she says.
Huh.
Cause you clearly have a very full plate, Chris, and I think it's a miss if we haven't.
Well, I'm gonna answer off the cuff.
Please.
So like, I don't think anyone's doing it.
Okay,
I think anyone could do it. If a group had capacity or someone had the
Right.
capacity to do that. I think everyone is very busy and doing a lot of things.
no,
I think that this is something we could incorporate into what Megan's class is gonna be looking at, and maybe could be part of a rollout next summer. I think we could talk to them about that. It's perfectly in line with what they're gonna be looking at.
that would be awesome. And we might wanna do some things in advance of that also, but just the too many times when it's not just us, but everywhere, people who are the doers are so busy doing that there's no one like behind, like sort of saying, they're all like, okay, what's next? now we finish this, what's next, instead of taking the time to celebrate what's been done and making sure people really know what has been done, so. So it may be that, I mean, we might want to be thinking ahead towards January, when it's the next town meeting reimagined, where people really loved your posters, Chris, in the
Okay.
last town, the October meeting. It was October, right?
Well, we talked about doing that, right?
Right.
Labeling, right?
Yeah, yeah, and so, but we didn't have enough time to implement, so we had what the goals were. And if we could create a poster that says, and here's some of the changes that have been made already to meet those goals, like with the plan, and here's what we've done, maybe it's, I think that would be a really awesome product to get to. And I don't seem to be volunteering for anything else. I would need partners, Matic partners, to help me think about creating said thing. But it would be, I think it would be a very good goal to have something for the January meeting that is a progress or implementation report or something that says, look, these are the changes from BMG, or these are the changes that we've done.
When you say you want dramatic partners, are you looking for some type of theatrical performance?
Interpretive dance.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, something
Cluster development day.
We'll all be proud now. Linking arms, yeah. No, somebody who has like artistic,
Oh.
or sort of creative.
I can
Let's
be
go
I
creative.
can be a thought partner.
Can you be a thought partner? Let's be thought partner.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Is your presentation that you're giving tomorrow, pretty like, not jargony, but oriented towards a well-informed planning zoning kind of crowd as opposed to
Yes.
a general public kind of
It's a
crowd?
VLCT, it's a
Right,
planning and zoning.
right. So you're assuming everybody in the room pretty much knows a lot of what you're talking about.
Yes, and I'm not getting into a lot, I'm talking more about, well, I am getting into some of what we've done, but I'm also talking more about like the process and like the outreach that we did,
Okay.
the,
Sort of best practices, what other people should do.
like a lot of the prep work we did to get the select board in the place to be comfortable with it, like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was a really big lift, and we all kind of chipped in, like posting up our forum, and I went on the meetings with select board members, and
Yeah,
we kind of, and like that really got it over the hump, so there's like, I'm talking about that a little bit.
Okay.
there's the process.
So I was wondering, like,
Yeah.
could your presentation be
Well,
adapted?
certainly, send me your presentation, or if, if for the content heavy, or I will look to you, Wendy and I will look to you, because we're partners
Yeah.
together. Look to others to help us build, like, know what content.
Well, if you
content
have
to pull from.
content, it's, I mean, it's relatively easy to lay it out in a way and graphically make it look good. So if you have the content,
Right, that's the part that, so we need like the
The report
Yeah.
that went along with the.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good
the
summary.
town planners report. or the
yes, your,
planning commission.
that
Yeah.
report was excellent.
I also have, thank you, there's also the B&G highlights that are on the website.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, there's a frequently asked questions.
yeah, oh, right,
There's
that's
a
you
lot of
worked on.
material there.
The materials, right, it's just figuring out how to pull that out into the graphic.
What you
Like,
want
what's
to focus
important?
on,
What's
yeah.
important? Okay, so Wendy. Mid-November, we'll start thinking about it.
That works for you.
Okay,
I'm going to that conference, Sabina, you're going to, right?
Wendy, Tim.
And Wendy, so we'll ask you for your autograph after your presentation.
You're going tomorrow?
Yes.
Isn't it better to find out now?
well, where?
Yes, I was like, glad you're in the front row.
Sit back.
That's great, okay, that works good.
You look real happy about it.
I do have I don't have a picture of the planning commission, but I do have a picture of the select board
That's
at the
okay,
final meeting.
there you go.
Yeah.
We're happy to see that.
Great, so that's fine.
Okay, so other updates? So people have.
I can jump in. There's a CCRPC housing convening on October 29th. that I'll be attending. I don't know if anyone else is interested. I can send the link. So I'll go to that and represent Jericho and report back.
Can you
That,
say a little bit more about what that is?
yeah, so it feels a little bit like a support group, honestly, for housing committee members. So CCRPC gets together, they will sometimes do like a municipal or a summary of what's coming out of Montpelier or things on the horizon, things to look at. Sometimes they've got specific housing topics. So, you know, one year it was ADUs or something like that, where they'll give some informative whatever. And then they pretty much go through town by town and check in with a representative from each town to say, hey, what are y'all doing about housing? And, you know, it's a time for people to share what they've been doing, changes that they've made, or upcoming projects, questions, problems that they're facing. And it's informative, but like I say, it also is a little bit of a support group for folks who can say, yeah, that's really hard, or, oh, I've done that. Let me share the materials we put together so you don't have to reinvent the wheel kind of a thing.
And it's virtual, right?
It's
Now,
virtual.
this time?
Yeah, I think it's 5:30 to 7:30.
I went once in person and they had, Farrell, the developer, spoke
Mhm.
about projects.
So that, and then that housing committee, put out their housing report. We do one a year. And so, yeah, Chris handed that out. There's PDF versions too, if you prefer, but just, I'm not gonna go over it. It's dense, but, that is for your perusal. And then, the other thing that Chris wanted me to touch base on was just to say that the select board at their last meeting talked about looking at the fee structure, and in particular, looking at the recommendation that the housing committee made to either incentivize or at least make multi-housing look the same or cost the same as single family housing for different fees. So they talked about how they wanted to do that and they wanted to look at it, but then they need to actually do it. So it was a little bit of a lot about nothing, but I think at one of their upcoming meetings, they'll have the fees schedule printed out and we'll talk about potentially making some changes. Is that what you wanted, Chris?
Yeah, just that list of 1 through 9, and it says planning commission, select board, planning commission. The select board is starting to take action on there.
Good.
Yeah.
I have an update. The Conservation Commission got a grant last winter, to fund the planting of, trees in Jericho. I wanted to say street trees, but they're not all street trees, but trees to benefit the public. And so, happy to report that a large number of them were planted over the last 2 weeks. So, we are now gonna start asking for volunteers to help keep them watered until the frost comes. But, the bulk of them are near the Browns River Middle School complex, if you will. So if you're driving in that area, you'll see a lot of new trees.
What kind of trees?
Hawthorn, not very big fruit trees.
Flowering.
In addition, and flowering, yes.
Wonderful.
Those are located between the library and the Underhill ID School.
Yeah.
Behind the Underhill ID School is a mix of different trees, including serviceberry.
That's fun.
Big fan of those.
And along the street, River Road, red maples for, shade over the sidewalk and, aesthetic.
Nice. Congratulations, Sabina. I'm sure when you say the
Yes.
Conservation Commission got a grant, you got a grant.
I did the heavy lifting, I will say, yes, it's true.
Good job.
And I'm doing the heavy lifting of the water now too, so I need to spread the love. But anyway, yes, that's a good news story.
Well, you could share what, we heard from our town clerk about the film as well, if you want to.
I could share that, but that's sort of.
That's her job.
No, it's just not a done deal. Well, there's a conversation happening about an opportunity to buy a Liberty Elm in honor of the 250th anniversary of yeah, so, we're just talking about it, but you can get a little plaque, a commemorative plaque, and get the tree. Basically, you're buying the stuff, so it's not like we're getting anything except a nice tree and a good,
But that's something
a good celebration, a good notion, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're thinking about where to put it if we get it. So. Is it the sesquicentennial? That's the 250th? What's the right word for
I
that?
don't know.
That sounds right.
It's a mouthful.
It is.
Yeah.
Anyway, 250 next summer.
Nice. Okay, any other updates? We all went to Municipal Day in Montpelier. Nina, Eric, myself, and Jessica Alexander. And Municipal Day, I hadn't gone in a long time and it's really great. So in the future, it's once a year if you're interested to go. It's like sort of mini community college for everybody like us, plus town staff and select board people and administrators. And we went to a lot of good sessions on infrastructure and housing and financing and zoning and stuff that just sort of gave me, I felt like I learned a lot. I got updates. We got some contacts, people, just sort of informs the work. I feel like it was really well organized, and they talked a lot. The opening, the keynote was about stability in listening to people with different opinions. Interesting. And we are going tomorrow to, the three of us are going tomorrow to, yeah, that's VLCT.
Yeah.
No, right? Yes, for zoning specifically.
Planning and zoning, and it's focusing on Act 47 and 181.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're gonna learn about CHIP.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a whole session on that.
whole session on CHIP. That was the main reason why I wanted to go.
Right?
We didn't
I didn't know that you were presenting.
Recently.
Right. Now that I know you're going, I was gonna skip it. I was gonna be.
We're gonna go to the skinny pancake.
Right. Right. And then I guess the wastewater task force is kind of chugging along and starting to look at more content. They have like 3 subgroups: outreach, financing, and engineering. And looking at more content for the website. The select board approved the application, right, for the PER.
The CWSRF loan, yeah.
Yeah, so the preliminary engineering report that they're hiring Boys and King to do is moving forward. They have some, formalities to dot the i's and cross the t's, and they did that. So that, and then this project that we talked about tonight will be a real good complement to that. Any other updates? Okay.
I did have one question.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Capital plan, budget plan.
Yes, so the capital plan, one of the select board members has been working on it, as like the designated person with Paula.
Okay.
And with Chris a little bit too,
A little
right?
bit.
So making some progress. One of the sessions that we went to in Montpelier that I went to was, no, Sabina, you were there.
Yeah, but you're conflating two different meetings. This was the town fair that we went to 2 weeks ago, the VLCT thing with the capital planning.
So they talked, right, so they.
I think, I guess there's a lot of overlap in these meetings.
Right, a lot of
Yes.
overlap, but they are the state, right? It was a state organization and VLCT. They have parallel tracks of developing templates and guides to help towns develop capital plans. And the one gave this presentation, said they were looking for towns who want to be the pilot towns for the development of the guide. So I was gonna follow up with Paula and see like, would we be interested to be one of those? Like, how far along are they? Sort of a subset of that really is the wastewater financing
yeah.
group, which is also gonna be feeding into the capital plan, but really hasn't done their work yet. So we don't really have, we don't really know yet, but that's a primary
Right.
goal. Is to come up with what the capital plan needs to look like, at least for wastewater.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything from town hall? We imagine? No,
Town meeting.
And
no.
The next.
January
January
20th. Mark your calendar.
Right, so the wastewater task force thinks that they need to have materials and stuff ready for
Yes.
that. It sounded like you
Please.
came up with an idea for tonight, of maybe how the planning commission should
Yeah.
participate. So that should probably be on an agenda, maybe for us so that we have a little bit of time to think about like, do we want a table and who's gonna be there and what's gonna be at the table? And who knows the best about the structure of the 20th, as Jen?
Yeah. I mean, it'll be very similar to last year, so it'll look like a budget review. And select board will, go through either sections or in a lot of cases, each line item in the budget. And, there'll be opportunities to amend and. But I do think that we'll have tables.
We will have tables,
Before.
yeah, and time before, time after we talked.
We don't know what the food situation is gonna be like. I think it'll be different this year, but I don't know what that's gonna look like yet.
Mhm.
And I think we're gonna do it in the library instead of in the auditorium.
Nice. Okay, any other business? To review, I guess that was the other business would be start planning for town meeting revision. Okay, planning for November 3rd. So November 3rd will be our next item on our list, which is PUDs and clustering.
Yeah, I gotta.
So that'll be a good logical convention on what we talked about tonight.
I will not be.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. Yeah,
You passed
I think
it.
that's what it was though, PUDs, clustering.
Yeah.
There actually, it says encouraging cluster development. Right on that,
Oh, yeah.
encouraging cluster development. Okay, we ready to adjourn?
I
Yes.
move to adjourn.
SJ moves to adjourn, and a second,
I'll second that.
Eric, thank you. All those in favor of adjourn, please say yes.
Yeah. Look at that, 8:53.
Yeah, really, thank you.